Where did that come from? How did church buildings become part and parcel of the Christian story? Well, there's another interesting book entitled Pagan Christianity that traces exactly where we got many of the traits so commonly found in Christian culture today, yet which were totally unknown to the first Christians, the apostles, and the early church. It turns out that Christianity borrowed from Greek and Roman practices while under Emperor Constantine's umbrella of protection, absorbing customs and implementing procedures to help them fit in that drastically altered the way believers lived out their faith. Now, it's quite understandable that after 300 years of non-acceptance and persecution, people were maybe ready to make some changes and even compromises to improve their lot in life. But all of that was to alter Christianity forever, to the point that the resemblance between the early church and institutional Christianity today is nearly non-existent. Upon his conversion, the Emperor Constantine began building the first Christian temples. Before that, it seems that Christians met in humbler spaces, with all the believers being on the same level. There was no elevated platform where an elite group of people called clergy taught from, addressing a passive audience seated in a lower level. Actually, there wasn't any clergy in those days, nor priesthood, nor pastors. Initially, it wasn't the format we've grown familiar with today. A welcome message, group singing, announcements, then everyone sits down to listen to a pre-written sermon. In those days, there was open participation by all members throughout the meetings. People would share their gifts, talents, thoughts, lessons, what the Lord was teaching them, and how He had moved in their lives since the last meeting. There was an intimacy with fellow members as a result of this process. Those attending wore everyday clothes and didn't dress up for the occasion in special Sunday go-to-meeting garments. And many more things changed in all aspects as Christianity became accepted in the Roman world. So what do we have today? A whole culture of Christian assembly supposedly built on the New Testament, yet barely resembling how it first started. Now, that's not to condemn the way we live out and celebrate our faith today, how we meet and worship, just that we can't really say that we're doing it just like the first believers, because so much has changed since those first days. And that's laid out clearly in this book. I couldn't agree with some of the final conclusions of the book, but the research is excellent, fascinating, and it helped me begin grasping the difference of how things were in the beginning of the movement and how it all changed over time. What we got right. I think we can all agree that we have the right message from the right messenger. We have a written record of how the Christian life is supposed to be lived, that He showed us while among us, and we are to copy that and implement it in our daily walks with Him. We have this amazing truth that we're all convinced of and have been changed by, founded on the incredible example of Jesus of Nazareth, who showed us how it's to be lived and applied. So, if we're spot on, why is the faith born from His life and teaching so under attack these days? Are we growing and making the progress we should in the correct directions? There's the aspect of suffering for righteousness' sake, which we are to expect. That's a promise of something that will happen to those who live like Jesus lived. But I think it's important to assess whether that's the case the majority of the time, or if maybe sometimes we're suffering for our own errors and for problems we are bringing on ourselves by attitudes or actions. Let's start with the big question. Are we known today for our love as the first Christians were? When asked by the Barna Group what words or phrases best describe Christianity, the top response among Americans ages 16 to 29 was anti-homosexual. For a staggering 91% of non-Christians, this was the first word that came to their mind when asked about the Christian faith. The next most common negative descriptions? Judgmental, hypocritical, too involved in politics, exclusive, bigoted, insincere, and uncaring. Uncaring, when the first Christians were known for their love. Realistically, who on earth wouldn't want what Jesus brought when He came, and what the first Christians were known for in those early days? Healing for sick bodies, food for empty stomachs, love for lonely hearts, and nourishment for hungry souls.
Somebody loves you and wants you to know, longs to be with you wherever you go. Somebody loves you, and right from the start, somebody wants